Welcome to the Career Ready podcast. Learn about resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, interviewing, and all the things you need to be career ready with the Career Services Center at College of DuPage. I'm your host for today's episode, Rebecca Harrington. In addition to learning about resources and the job search process, an important part of being career ready is understanding different career paths. To help us explore professions in political science, I have invited Maureen Heffren-Ponicki to talk with me today. Maureen is a professor of political science here at the College of DuPage. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So before we get started, can you share a short introduction or, of course, as we like to call it in career services, your elevator pitch?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I'm an associate professor of political science and chair of our political science department here at College of DuPage. Teaching is a second career for me. I spent my first career in the nonprofit sector doing work at the community level, grassroots organizing, social work, community development, and doing work at the policy level, especially on global economic policy and trade policy. So I've worked in Latin America and across the U.S. I worked in Peru with street and working children, in New York State with migrant farm workers, in the city of Chicago with foster children and teen parents, and in Los Angeles organizing communities to prevent teen pregnancy. Worked in Philadelphia with the American Friends Service Committee on a project to try to what we call democratize the global economy, which basically meant we were working in a coalition with groups across Latin America to make trade policy more fair and just for everyday people. So I've done strategic planning for nonprofits, service learning programs, and then I tumbled into teaching. I got in the classroom as an adjunct professor and thought, wait, why haven't I been doing this? I love teaching, and I love how political science allows us to seek answers to so many questions about our world. And as I mentioned, all the different types of jobs I did, political science allows you a lot of flexibility in designing your own career path.
Yeah, that's actually surprising to hear all the places you lived and all the work that you've done. I think a lot of students might be surprised to think of that as political science. I think, we see politicians on TV all the time and we think that's politics. Like only if I want to run for office, that's the only reason I'd major in political science, but it doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case.
No, in fact, that is one of the first things I say in class is most of you will think of political science as elections and campaigns, but political science is simply the process of understanding how we as a community basically get along. There's a famous political scientist, Harold Loswell, who famously said political science is studying who gets what, when, and how.
Oh,
that's it. Who gets what, when, and how? Who gets unemployment? How long do they get it? Who takes care of kids if the parents can't? Who pays for the parks? So in political science, we just study this process and especially how power is built, whether it's by the people, the grassroots, by the elite, et cetera. But how do you use power to affect those decisions of who gets what, when, and how?
Oh, that's wonderful. And if you think about it, right, there's so many resources in the world, and figuring out and kind of managing all of that is a huge process.
And especially because those resources are fixed.
Yes.
So we have to figure out how to share them.
Absolutely. So kind of dive a little deeper then. So can you tell us a little bit about, again, the field of political science and government and the different career paths it can lead to?
Yeah, great. So what this field does for a student is it equips them with the critical thinking skills that are essential to thrive in any career. Mm-hmm. They learn to read tough stuff. They learn to write and communicate out. They learn to more about the scientific process as it pertains to the political and social world. They become deeper thinkers. That's actually my number one goal for them, to become a deeper thinker about our world, which alerts them to unintended consequences of a policy decision. It helps them to protect them from baseless conspiracy theories. And it unlocks the many keys that exist for making change So students can then leave that sense of powerlessness behind. So many feel like I can't make a change. But once you begin to learn how the world works and how the policies work, it's in that learning that you see the path to change. So for this reason, political science has long been a solid major that can build into a path, obviously into politics, but also law. It's long been one of the dominant paths into law.
Sure.
But business, journalism, communications, teaching, the nonprofit sector, and many, many more. So what I often tell students is if you're not sure what exactly you want to do, this is often one of those great majors that gives you the flexibility. You just need the degree to then go try this job in business and then realize, oh, well, maybe I don't like that. So then you of course have to do some networking and market yourself and all that. But then you can try something in another field, and then you can try something in another field. So you don't have to have figured out what you're going to do for the rest of your life right now. But I do tell them to follow their intellectual joy. Like, what jazzes you up when you learn about it? And if political science is something that you get excited about when you read, well, zone into that and follow that.
Yeah, or if you like the problem-solving piece of it, if you like managing a project, or, I like that. There's so many skills that are transferable that we know. We talk a lot on this podcast about the NACE competencies, and that these are the skills that all employers are looking for. And the number one is always problem-solving. Right, troubleshooting, whatever you want to call it, critical thinking, and then also communication. So it sounds like a great field to learn those skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's in fact what you practice, right?
Yeah, I think and actually listening to you is, I think a lot of students now think of business as that kind of like default degree of like, I'm not sure what I want to do, so I'm just going to major in business. And that's not bad. It's what I studied. But I like the idea of thinking about political science, social sciences as an option that can help give you even a wider variety of options when you graduate.
Yes. And I think what it often does too is it allows you to problem solve in a very comprehensive way, in the sense that you look at history, you look at economics, you look at culture, you look at how human behavior, you look at institutions, like how do institutions work. And so all of that is really helpful when you're thinking about problem solving. So it's those analytical skills to be able to pull all these different strands together and say, oh, well, this has happened in history, and I know this has happened, and might we be careful if we move in this direction, but what about that? So, yeah, I think it's a real, it's a deep way to kind of approach multiple jobs.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking about it now. I loved my poli-sci classes in college, and I probably should have paid more attention or gone with that. No, that's super exciting. So let's go a little bit further with the skills and strengths, right? So, what are some more skills and strengths students gain while completing a political science program or taking a series of courses, and how does it help them prepare for a bachelor's degree? So again, we're talking about, College of DuPage and associates. So preparing for that bachelor's degree and then a job afterwards.
Great. So as you mentioned, arguably one of the most sought after skills in the workplace is communication, both oral and written. So political science classes will train you to communicate effectively. You will also acquire, as we kind of mentioned, the analytical skills and the data skills. Political science has a large quantitative angle to it, especially if you go on for the bachelor's. So analyzing complex issues, identifying patterns, sorting through a dense information landscape, and then identifying ways to move forward and solve problems are the types of skills a student can expect to build. Additionally, as I mentioned, we use quantitative but also qualitative methods to understand the world, as well as humanistic perspectives. So we're considered a social science, but in many ways also part of the liberal arts. So we use all different approaches to understand the world. Students will learn to appreciate different points of view. They learn to talk across difference, and they can leverage those skills for most future jobs or studies. I think of, as I know you know lots about, we here at College of DuPage bring in groups that help students talk across political difference. And we tell them the research shows that when you debate someone, you're not going to change their mind. And we want to, but you're not going to. So better to invest your time in truly listening and understanding, because by listening and understanding, you become a deeper thinker. So if you're problem solving and you're not listening to somebody because you just don't like what they're saying or maybe the way that they're saying it, you're not going to help your company, your nonprofit, your school to kind of move forward if you can't hear what people are saying. So political science really, because as we know, we have a little problem out in society right now.
Yes, definitely.
Where we're struggling to listen to one another. So we're really going deep on that skill right now in the classrooms.
Yeah, I think a lot of our student listeners, a lot of listeners, right? But definitely someone that's younger even, is looking at our political climate right now and thinking that just seems difficult. And so I think this is a way to think about, how could you change things? And I think, too, sometimes it can seem overwhelming, but when you have those fundamental skills and then you find, like thinking about your career path, right? You find a problem you want to work on and then you work on that. Right. And that's all we can do, right? Is kind of piece by piece.
Absolutely. And we're finding that students tend to not want to talk about these issues even in the classroom. And that's worrisome.
Yeah.
Because that's our laboratory for learning. And if you can't, I think people forget that sometimes when someone's talking, they're thinking. Right? There's certain people that think first and then talk, and there's some people who need to talk to think.
Me.
Me too. Yes.
My husband doesn't understand this,
Yes.
but this is how it is.
Yes. So if you can't talk about these issues, then you can't think. So we have to make these spaces safe, but not so safe that you're not able to speak and kind of push some of the boundaries. And that's a very hard thing in this day and age because, speech sometimes can push people to feel uncomfortable. And so how do we do that where that's okay, but obviously we don't, like I always say in my classrooms, we do this with respect.
Right.
And learning is never disrespectful. Asking a question out of real curiosity is not disrespectful. We know disrespect when we see it. So those are fine lines, and helping people to understand that just because you ask a question, don't feel like people are judging you. You asked a question, and that is always allowed in a school.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes to the skills and strengths, right? Is that you're learning how to communicate, how to ask questions, and how to express opinions. And I agree. I've long said to students, school is where you do this. This is the best place to do it because once you graduate and you're kind of out in the workforce, you might feel more constrained in a professional setting to kind of ask questions or explore these ideas. This is the safest possible place. So I love all that. So are there experiences or opportunities that you recommend developing professionals seek out while preparing to start a career in politics, government, advocacy, all of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say there's probably two things that are the most important thing for a student to do now. One, internships or volunteering. So, and I know you strongly believe in this as well, but I cannot say enough about that, especially if you're a student that's unsure of what you want to do. You got to get out there and try stuff out. And internships I think our country needs to do a better job of really boosting the applied learning opportunities.
Absolutely.
But volunteering, and as somebody, as I mentioned, from the nonprofit sector, volunteering is really doing all of those things as well. You're getting the experience. You are trying to decide whether you want to do this, right? Does it bring life to you? Because that's essentially what students should be looking for. Does this fill me up or not? Because there's something out there that you have to find your gift. So you're going into these internships or volunteering to try to figure out what your gift is. But then you're also meeting and networking, and networks are so crucial to this whole thing of career success, but you're networking. But then also, say you're the type of volunteer who showed up every day, was terrific, was never late. When you then go to get a job, you're calling that boss, and that boss is going to give you a glowing recommendation. So internships, volunteering, service learning, any of those, that is the number one thing students should be doing now. Secondly, and this may seem like a little thing, but unfortunately it's not, you should be learning how to consume accurate news now. We are in desperate need of informed citizens. We need each and every person to be playing their part, which means stop consuming news if you don't know if it's accurate. So students always ask me, how do you get rid of bias? And I say, bias is in the human person. You're never going to completely get rid of it. We want to get rid of extreme bias, but more importantly, we want to get rid of inaccurate news. We don't want to be spending our time reading things that were fabricated that are false. So work on learning how to consume accurate news. Those would be the two things I'd say to do.
I agree, obviously, with both of those. And I think that accurate news piece, it's much harder in today's world with all of our social media. It's like we can get news from more and more places, but then that also means we can get news from more and more places.
Yes.
I would say I think I like the word extreme. If something makes you feel extreme in one way or the other, I would question it, maybe look for more. I love it. Yeah. All right. So what are you doing in your program here at College of DuPage specifically to help prepare students for the field?
Great. So I would say we're working in three main areas. One is obviously classwork and the training that goes on in the classroom. We offer a wide variety of classes ranging from the fundamental classes such as American politics, Introduction to Political Science. Those are two great classes for students to get started in. But we also offer more specific ones such as state and local politics, urban politics, comparative politics, and world politics. So we've got a lot for students to kind of really explore with. So that's the one thing. Secondly, we have a couple of fabulous student clubs. We have a Stellar Model UN club that gives students the opportunity, and this one is really applied learning because they practice research, they practice public speaking, coalition building, and networking with students from around the world at various conferences. That one I can't say enough about the actual skill building piece of it. And I would say, we often talk about those soft skills or whatever they're calling them now. But when a student's at a Model UN conference and they have to kind of build a block and a group of countries that are going to help them, that's all that soft skills networking, and you can't learn that in the classroom. You have to practice it. So Model UN Club is one. The second club that a lot of political science majors have joined is our UNICEF Club, which is a club that works closely with UNICEF out of the UN to make change for children around the world. To raise awareness about what's going on. They do some fundraisers, and it just and they get to build their networks amongst students who have similar passions. So that's the second thing is student clubs, and then the third thing is internships. So we connect on individual basis students with opportunities locally, with politicians, nationally, even internationally. We've had students get some great opportunities. We send them on to our fabulous Career Center here at College of DuPage. But I would say those would be the three areas, the classwork, the student clubs, and then the internships.
One thing that was really exciting to me is you've had some really good speakers that have come in too. I went to the one that was from the State Department, and that was so interesting. There's so many careers. who would have thought? If you want to travel, you want to live in other countries and do things, like that was exciting.
Yes. No, I should have mentioned that we have kind of a speaker series, and we try to bring in people. So the real world, we hear from politicians and different areas, like the State Department. What was interesting about that State Department was that you didn't need the bachelor's for certain positions. And I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
You kind of think you must have to have something special.
Yeah.
And no. You just need a good interest in it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Is there anything else that you recommend to students or young professionals to prepare to work in this field? Because I'm sure it can be, in some ways, a very wonderful field to work in, but also sometimes a frustrating field to work in, because sometimes things don't always go the way that you'd like, or you kind of have to change things up. And anyways, just what are some things you would recommend to get students ready to work in this field?
So first of all, I would say get in and try the classes, because as we started this off, you mentioned that most people think it's just about campaigns and elections. Get in and try the classes so you can kind of figure out what this field is about. Second, what we already talked about, which is the internships, volunteering, service learning. Get out there and do something. But then also I would say begin to build your networks. You scrub your social media profiles and make friends in all your classes.
Yes, you never know whose dad works for what, or whose cousin is something.
Yes, or those friends will be the people that you call as your career goes on. They're going to be the ones that work at a different company, and you're going to call them up and say, "Oh, do you know somebody who works here?" et cetera, et cetera. They will be your networks. So I always say network horizontally, and I often say, if you don't like the word networking, just make friends.
Sure.
Because that's actually the beauty of it. Your friends become your network. And then also network vertically with your professors. Come to our office hours, get to know us. There's been some studies on success long-term for students, and they find that it doesn't necessarily rank with or track with the rank of the college. What it tracks with on both long-term earnings and happiness is if the student got involved in the institution in which they're studying at. So, and that speaks to those networks. Did you get to know people? Did you get involved in a club? Did you talk to your professor and they thought, oh, you'd be a perfect one to, do some research on this project that I heard about? So the more you do that, the more people you know, the more connections you build. And the research on connections generally is just solid as a rock. Right? That we just know that connections is the stuff of personal career success, but also, in my perspective, like making change, on an issue.
Right.
It's about making connections.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you're involved in something and if you want to make change, the more people you know, the better connections you have, the more likely you are to maybe be able to make that change. Yes. I also, we always tell students in our career services department, as a student, this is the best time to network because you're a student. Yeah. Anyone will talk to you. If they don't, it's just because they don't have time. It's not because they don't want to. Yeah. Everyone wants to talk to students. This is the time to reach high as you want, as far as you want, to network with people, because this is the situation that all professionals want to be in, is that students want to talk to them.
Yes. And it's kind of amazing. You see how many people want to help.
Yes.
They spend their time, and it always astounds me how good people are and how giving of their time. And I agree, there's some that don't have time.
Sure.
But for the most part, people turn around and help out those behind them coming up.
Absolutely. You just have to ask.
Yep.
Which is, I think, sometimes the scary part.
And a skill.
Yes, and a skill.
So practicing.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. So if a student or a listener is interested in learning more about the program here at COD, what can they do?
So I would say go to the COD website, search political science. You will be able to see all of our courses, different career maps. We have some programs, articulation agreements, where you could do 2 years here and then transfer into another school to get your bachelor's. So definitely look at that. But then you can email or call me directly. My number is 630-942-2012. But call me directly or email and let's talk. We would love to have you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that our faculty here love to talk to prospective students. That's part of your job.
Yes,
you're so excited to do it. So she's not lying. She really does want you to reach out to her.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to share? Anything we missed?
No, I guess the last thing you kind of said in the beginning, but I'm just going to reiterate it. If you don't know what you want to do, start. The reason at College of DuPage, where we have certain requirements in, say, your social and behavioral sciences, and you have to take a few classes, use that to help explore. So from my perspective, whether you go into political science as a career or you get one solid class and you become a better citizen and help us to self-govern this crazy democracy, so be it. But get out there and explore through the classes.
Yeah. And I thought, actually something that I heard you say once that is what really made me want to have you on today too, is talking about how being at college is not, it's helping prepare you for a career, but it's also helping you to be a better citizen.
Yes.
And that's a really important thing.
Yes. In fact, colleges our founders developed the first higher education institutions because they knew if we are going to have a democracy, then we have to have an educated populace. And so it's the prime reason why we have colleges is so that we can, quote unquote, self-govern. And so, yes, I feel very passionate about that.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks to all of our listeners, and special thanks again to Maureen for joining us today on the podcast. We hope you enjoyed hearing about careers in political science. And remember, if you have a question for us, you can submit it to careerpodcast@cod.edu or on social media at COD Career Center, and you may hear the answer in a future episode.